Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into something, well, absolutely fundamental to being human. Language. I mean, just think about it for a second. You've got these ancient cuneiform tablets holding the very seeds of civilization.
Right?
And then fast forward to today, you have these massive cloud-based code repositories basically powering our entire digital world. Language, in all its forms, lets us capture thoughts.
Yeah, fleeting thoughts.
Exactly, fleeting thoughts, and make them solid, enduring, something you can analyze, build on, argue with across huge stretches of time and space.
But that very power also kind of throws its own limitations into sharp focus, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, think about, say, a master sushi chef. Years and years of practice distilled into these tiny movements,
No.
way too precise to really describe properly in words.
Right, you can't just write a manual for that.
Exactly. Or take that feeling, that Portuguese word saudade. It's this deep longing, but translating it just loses something.
Yeah, the English longing doesn't quite cut it.
Not really. And even in pure thought, maybe a mathematician has this sudden insight, but it happens before the words or symbols form. Language just can't quite contain it all.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then.
Yeah.
We've got some really fascinating source material here, and we want to explore this tension, the incredible power of language as this tool for knowledge, but also where it hits its limits, those boundaries.
Okay,
Okay, let's get into it.
great. So first big question. Can all knowledge actually be expressed in words or symbols?
Okay.
Now, at first glance, modern life seems to show, yes, we've got particle physics theories laid out in, well, elegant math symbols.
Right, super complex stuff boiled down.
And our whole legal system, it hangs on the precise wording of laws, of statutes.
Yeah, every comma matters there.
But then you stumble upon this idea of tacit knowing. Michael Polynesian wrote about this.
Tacit knowing. Okay.
It's that know-how that kind of lives in our actions. It often goes way beyond what we can actually articulate.
Can you give an example?
Sure, think about those amazing latte art champions.
Oh, yeah, the ones who make swans and stuff.
Exactly. They create these incredible designs with these tiny, millimeter-perfect flicks of the wrist. And even when scientists try to track it with fancy motion capture, they really struggle to break that fluid motion down into a simple, teachable algorithm. It's just intuitive skill.
I see. So it's knowledge, but not easily written down.
Precisely. And it's not just in, food art. Think about the perfumers in grass, the noses.
Right, the fragrance experts.
Yeah. They can tell apart incredibly subtle scent combinations, often stuff that even, advanced chemistry tools can't quite pin down yet.
Wow.
And their words for describing these smells, things like buttery or vanilla or maybe cherry candy, they only hint at the huge olfactory world they're actually perceiving. Their internal library of smells is way bigger than their vocabulary for them.
That makes sense. It's like they know the difference even if they can't perfectly label it for someone else.
Exactly. And it's not just these niche sort of artisanal fields either, even SpaceX engineers landing those rockets.
Okay. High-tech stuff.
Totally cutting edge. They talk about relying on a certain feel for the telemetry data, a sense that goes beyond the rule books, the manuals.
An intuition.
Kind of, yeah. An intuitive understanding that often makes the crucial difference in those really high-pressure moments. It's not just following steps 1, 2, 3.
So all these examples really back up that Polanyi quote then.
Absolutely. We can know more than we can tell. It just perfectly captures that gap, doesn't it, between what we understand internally and what we can actually manage to express using language.
Okay, that's clear. So if some knowledge really does seem to live outside words, then the next obvious question is, well, can we even think or know without using language at all? It feels kind of weird to even ask that.
It does feel counterintuitive, I agree. But there's actually some pretty compelling evidence that pre-linguistic infants, babies before they can talk, they're already doing some surprisingly smart cognitive stuff. They can track statistical patterns in syllables they hear, which shows they get structure implicitly.
Without words.
Without words. And they can even do approximate math, like judging quantities with arrays of dots, basic number sense, long before they learn to count 1, 2, 3.
Wow. That's amazing. And it's not just human babies, right? What about animals?
Oh, absolutely. The animal kingdom is full of fascinating examples. Think about New Caledonian crows.
Tool users.
Yeah, they actually fashion hook tools from leaves to fish out grubs. That's complex problem solving, real innovation, and no language like ours.
Right.
Or bottlenose dolphins, they pass on these very specific techniques like using sponges to protect their noses while foraging. That gets passed down through generations.
So that's like culture without spoken language.
It's definitely a form of cultural transmission, yeah. Learning from others without verbal instructions.
Okay.
And then there's AI. This connects in an interesting way. There was research in 2022 with these language-free AI agents.
They used reinforcement learning, basically trial and error, to figure out optimal chess endgames.
Oh.
And what's cool is they came up with solutions that echoed insights from, like, 18th century human chess masters. All without any language input or output, just learning from playing the game.
So the thinking, the strategy, it can happen without the linguistic layer.
It strongly suggests that, yeah. Structured thought, building models of the world.
Yeah.
It seems possible just through interaction and, well, seeking rewards or goals.
So, okay, summing that part up. Language definitely boosts our thinking power hugely.
No doubt.
But it looks like it's not the only way to think or to know things or even to pass certain kinds of knowledge along.
Exactly. Which then leads to another interesting point, is actually speaking a language. Is that itself an example of knowing how to do something?
Okay. Not just knowing that Paris is the capital of France, but knowing how to speak French.
Precisely. Is fluency fundamentally a skill, a procedural knowledge? It feels like it, doesn't it? Like riding a bike or playing piano. You practice, you get better, it becomes automatic.
Right. Think about those bilingual call center operators, say, in Mumbai.
Okay.
They switch between Hindi and English effortlessly, sometimes right in the middle of a sentence. They're navigating grammar, politeness levels, slang, all at incredible speed.
Way faster than consciously thinking, okay, now I need the past participle.
Exactly. It's happening way too fast for conscious, rule-based decisions. It's ingrained practice. And you actually see hints of this in neuroscience, too. Some stroke patients, maybe they have serious damage to their declarative memory.
That's the memory for facts and events.
Yeah, conscious recall. They might struggle to remember what they had for breakfast, but they can still recite childhood prayers perfectly. Or count aloud.
So those specific language routines are stored differently.
It seems that way. More like procedural memory, the how-to memory for habits and skills. It's fascinating.
And doesn't this tie into Chomsky's ideas, universal grammar?
It does, yeah. Chomsky proposed this underlying sort of innate framework that helps all humans pick up language so consistently.
Like we're pre-wired for it.
Kind of. The fact that kids everywhere, different cultures, different languages, tend to hit similar milestones, babbling first words, basic sentences around the same ages, it really mirrors other knowing how developments, like learning to walk. It suggests there's this deep procedural substrate for language acquisition.
Okay. So language is a powerful tool. Thought can exist without it. And speaking is a kind of knowing how. Now, what about sharing knowledge over time, across generations? How crucial is language for that?
Oh, absolutely critical. Language acts as this vital bridge through time. The historical examples are just amazing.
Like what?
Think about the Polynesian vodka cruise, navigating the massive Pacific Ocean.
Right. Using stars and waves.
But also using oral poetry. These weren't just songs. They were intricate maps encoded in rhyme and rhythm.
Seriously. Maps and poems.
Yeah. Detailed knowledge of star paths, seasonal winds, island locations, all memorized and passed down generation after generation, long before written maps existed for them.
Wow. Holding that much vital info just in memory, through verse.
Incredible, isn't it? Now contrast that with today. Knowledge sharing can be almost instant.
Like scientific breakthroughs.
Exactly. A new biotech protocol, like CRISPR gene editing. The details get published in open access journals, sometimes within days. And researchers anywhere, Nairobi, Sao Paulo, wherever, can potentially replicate it almost immediately. The speed and scale are just revolutionary compared to the past.
So from oral poetry to digital journals.
Right. And then you have these really long-term visions, like the Long Now Rosetta Disk project. It's this physical disk designed to last for, get this, 10,000 years.
Whoa.
And it's etched with information on over 13,000 human languages. It's a deliberate attempt to safeguard our linguistic heritage, to kind of future-proof our collective memory against, well, whatever might happen.
That's ambitious.
It is. But all these examples, from ancient chants to futuristic archives, they all highlight how fundamental linguistic inscription is, whether carved in stone, printed on paper, or stored as bits.
So writing it down or recording it somehow.
Yes. Without that ability to externalize and preserve knowledge through language, our cumulative culture, everything we build on from the past, would be really limited by, individual lifespans and faulty memories.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Which leads nicely to the next point. Do different languages actually shape how we think about knowledge or how we present it? Is language neutral or does it color our view?
Well, the evidence really seems to point towards language having a shaping influence. It's not just a neutral tool.
Okay, give me an example.
Take the Yeli-Denia language, spoken on Russell Island. They apparently don't have a generic word for tree.
No word for tree. How does that work?
Instead, their vocabulary is super specific, focusing on individual species of trees. And this linguistic feature seems to correlate with this incredibly deep, nuanced botanical knowledge that often surprises visiting scientists.
So because their language forces them to be specific, they know more specifics.
It seems that way. Compare that to English, where our general word tree is useful for abstract thought, but it can also kind of gloss over important ecological details.
Fascinating. What else?
Well, there are the Pirahã people in the Amazon. They famously have very few number words, basically just concepts for few and many.
Right, I've heard about that.
And this linguistic setup seems to fit really well with their immediate barter economy, where precise counting beyond small amounts isn't as essential for their daily lives.
So the language reflects the cultural needs.
It seems to align, yeah. And even how we talk about knowing can differ. Like Mandarin Chinese has separate verbs for knowing a fact, that's zidao, and knowing a person, ren shi.
Ah, so knowing that versus knowing who.
Exactly. And that distinction subtly encourages speakers to think of social knowledge and factual knowledge as maybe different categories right from the start.
What about things like space and direction?
Oh, that's a great one. Speakers of Gugu Yimithir in Australia, they consistently use absolute cardinal directions north, south, east, west, even indoors.
Instead of left and right.
Yeah. The cup is north of the plate, even inside a house. And studies show this correlates with really exceptional spatial awareness and navigation skills. Like, they always know which way is north.
Wow. My sense of direction is terrible. Maybe I need to learn Gugu Yimithir.
Huh. Maybe. And one more really interesting one. Some languages actually build source criticism right into the grammar.
What do you mean?
Upper Napo Pichwa, spoken in the Amazon. Speakers have to mark how they know something. Did they see it themselves? Did they infer it? Did someone tell them?
So you can't just state something as fact without saying how you know.
Basically, yeah. It's obligatory.
Yeah.
Contrast that with English, where we often leave the source implicit. It's raining. How do I know? Did I see it, hear it, read it? You don't have to say.
And some argue that might make it easier for, say, misinformation to spread in English.
That's an argument some people make, yeah. Because the source isn't automatically questioned by the grammar itself.
Okay, so language isn't just expressing thoughts. It seems like it's actively involved in shaping how we perceive, categorize, and even evaluate information.
It really looks that way.
So let's tackle this head on then. If we can't express something easily in words, does that automatically mean we don't know it?
Well, that's a claim that gets beautifully challenged by, say, the arts and other nonverbal domains.
Like dance.
Exactly. Think about Martha Graham's choreography. It conveys these really complex, visceral narratives, deep emotions, all without a single spoken word. And audiences often get it. They understand the story, the feeling.
All right, the knowledge is transmitted, just not linguistically.
Precisely. Or look at science. Dorothy Hodgkin, the Nobel laureate.
Who worked on protein structures.
Yes. She could visualize these incredibly complex 3D protein structures in her mind through mental rotation before the X-ray data could be fully analyzed or turned into physical models others could easily see.
So her understanding, her knowledge, came before the words or even the shareable image.
Her intuitive grasp definitely preceded the formal representation, yeah.
Okay. But is there a risk if knowledge can't be expressed, if it stays purely tacit or visual?
Oh, absolutely. There's a definite risk to knowledge that lacks a way to be recorded or shared. The loss of Polynesian star lore is a really poignant example.
How so?
When colonial pressures disrupted their traditional navigation practices, and because there were no widespread written records of that incredibly complex star knowledge, generations of invaluable wisdom just vanished, lost to time. because it couldn't be easily passed on once the direct practice stopped.
That's tragic. It really highlights why finding ways to capture knowledge, even nonverbal knowledge, is so important.
Exactly. Which brings us to the next point. How well does language actually let us share our private internal experiences? Making them public. This feels like a struggle sometimes, right? Trying to explain exactly what you're feeling or thinking.
Oh, definitely. Like trying to describe pain to a doctor.
Well, that's a perfect example. Language gives us tools, even if they're imperfect. The McGill Pain Questionnaire is widely used.
I've heard of that. It has lots of descriptive words.
Yeah, 78 specific descriptors, words like throbbing, lancinating, gnawing. It helps patients translate those often awful, ineffable sensations into a form that doctors can actually work with for diagnosis and treatment.
So it bridges that gap somewhat.
It tries to, yeah. And think about social media, too. The hashtag Ice Bucket Challenge a few years back.
Right. Raising awareness for ALS.
It did more than just raise awareness. All those videos, people dumping ice water on themselves, it kind of translated the private physical experience of ALS symptoms into a shared, almost visceral event for millions.
And it actually boosted research funding significantly, didn't it?
Massively, yes. It made the private struggle public and relatable in a very powerful way.
But there are still limits, right? Philosophers talk about this.
Absolutely. The explanatory gap, no matter how poetic I get describing the color red, I can never fully convey the subjective experience of seeing red to someone who's been blind since birth. Language just can't cross that fundamental barrier of subjective consciousness.
So in that sense, language is like a compression tool.
That's a good way to put it. A high bandwidth, but ultimately still lossy compression algorithm for qualia. Those raw, subjective feelings of experience. It gets a lot across, but not everything.
Okay, so language helps share knowledge across time and somewhat bridges our internal worlds. What about large-scale collaboration? Pooling resources. How does language make that possible?
Oh, it's utterly essential for complex, large-scale human endeavors. Modern megaprojects are perfect examples.
Like the International Space Station.
Exactly. Orbiting above us right now. Modules built in Russia, the US, Europe, Japan, all assembled in space.
Mind-boggling complexity.
Totally. And it would be completely impossible without incredibly detailed, standardized protocols, shared technical glossaries, constant translation, all enabled by language. Precise shared language.
Like a massive multilingual construction site in orbit.
Pretty much. Or think about the open source software world. Linux, for example.
Built by volunteers.
Thousands of developers all over the globe speaking dozens of different native languages, collaborating to build and maintain this incredibly complex operating system.
How do they coordinate?
Mostly through shared code comments, highly specific technical jargon, online forums, issue tracking systems. They've built a whole linguistic ecosystem for collaboration.
Right, a specialized language for coding together.
Exactly. And we saw this kind of digital language-based collaboration on a huge scale during the COVID pandemic. The GSAID database.
For sharing virus genomes.
Yes. Scientists worldwide uploaded viral genome sequences almost instantly. This allowed researchers in over 130 countries to track mutations in near real time.
Which was crucial for vaccine development.
Absolutely crucial. And incredibly fast, all thanks to that shared digital infrastructure and the language to describe the data.
Any other examples?
Citizen science platforms, like Zooniverse.
Where regular people help with research.
Yeah. They use clear language-based instructions to get hundreds of thousands of volunteers, classifying galaxies, transcribing historical texts, identifying animals in camera traps, contributing to real scientific discovery.
So language lets us scale up human intelligence, essentially.
That's a great way to put it. Pooling cognitive resources on a massive scale.
Okay, so pulling this all together, language seems to function as this immense collective working memory for humanity.
Yeah, that feels right. It connects insights across disciplines, across time, from, traditional herbalists to modern chemists, from garage inventors to huge research teams. It lets knowledge spread and build.
It's the thread connecting it all.
It is.
Yeah.
But as we've talked about all through this deep dive, that thread definitely has gaps. It's not seamless.
Right. The crow making its tool in silence. That untranslatable feeling of sodad. The master artisan's touch.
Yeah, those all remind us that knowing, true knowing, goes way beyond what words alone can capture.
So where does that leave us? What's the takeaway for you listening?
Well, I think appreciating both sides is key. The immense power and the inherent limits of language, And
Yeah.
maybe it encourages us to think, beyond just verbal or written systems. How can we develop richer ways to express and share knowledge?
Like what?
Maybe through the nuances of sign languages or powerful data visualizations that show complex patterns instantly, or even understanding the ways AI might communicate differently as it evolves.
So looking for ways to capture the full spectrum.
Exactly. The full spectrum of knowing the spoken, yes, but also the enacted, the felt, the visualized. It's a huge ongoing question, really. How do we best share everything we can know? And that question evolves right alongside language itself.